Hey everyone, it's Miss Brooks with your Daily Dose of Math. Today we're going to discuss simplifying square roots and cube roots. Specifically, we're going to look at imperfect square roots and cube roots. So our first problem, we're going to simplify the square root of 81. So when we are simplifying square roots, what we want to do, we want to look for two of the same number that if we multiply it can give us the number under the square root. In this case, 81. That's the same thing as 9 times 9. So if I look at 9 times 9, right there I have two of the same number. I have two 9s. That means the square root of 81 is the same thing as 9. So my final answer here would be 9 because 9 times itself is 81. Now, unfortunately, not all square roots or cube roots are perfect squares. So when we make our factor tree, we're going to have numbers left over. So we need to talk about what we do with those leftovers in order to simplify our square root. So let's look at our second example. Simplify the square root of 18. So the first thing I want to do is make a factor tree. What can I multiply together to get 18? Well, 18 would be 2 times 9. 2 won't break down anymore, but 9 will break down to 3 and 3. Now, I like to keep all my numbers in a horizontal line, so I drop the 2 down one more time, and I have 2, 3, and 3. Now, when I simplify square roots, I'm looking for the same number 2 times. That's what a square root means, 2. And then I'm underlining any number I don't use. Now, the number that I circled, that's going to be able to leave the square root because it had a buddy that it could travel with. But the number that I underlined has to stay under the square root because it didn't have a buddy to travel with. So the square root of 18 would simplify to the same thing as 3 square root 2. Our next example, we're going to simplify 7 times the square root of 98. Now, when there's already a number on the outside of the square root, like in this case, there's already 7 on the outside, we're going to multiply that number with anything else we can take outside the square root. So let's try to break down 98. We only want to break down the numbers under the radical symbol or the square root symbol. So 98 is even. I know that means I can multiply it by 2. In this case, 2 and 49. And then 49 I know can break down to 2 7s. So again, I'm going to line up all my numbers. I have 2 7s. That means a 7 gets to leave the square root. But I have a 2 left over. That means I'm going to keep the square root with a 2 underneath. So on the outside, I already had a 7. I'm now taking the 7 from what I circled. And on the inside, I still have a 2. Simplify, the 7 that was already on the outside times the 7 I took would make this 49 square root 2. So simplifying square roots, we're looking for two of the same number within our big number under the square root. So let's simplify the square root of 216. So 216, I'm going to want to break this down. Again, it's even, so I know I can multiply it by 2. And that will be 2 and 108. 108 can break down. Again, that's even, so that could be 2 and 54. I'm going to drop this 2 down so they're on the same level. 54 can break down to 2 and 27. Going to bring these down so they're all on the same level. 27 would be 3 and 9. Going to bring these 2's down so they're all on the same level. And 9 would break down to 3 times 3. Again, I'm going to bring down the other numbers just so they are all on the same level. Now, this is a square root, so I want to simplify by circling all my pairs of the same number. I have a pair of 2's and a pair of 3's with 1 2 and 1 3 left over. So it is possible to get more than one pair. When this happens, everything I circled goes on the outside. So a 2 goes outside and a 3 goes outside. You multiply those if there's more than one thing. Square root on the inside, I have a 2 left that I underlined and a 3 left that I underlined. You multiply those as well. So if I finish this, 2 times 3 would be a 6 on the outside. 2 times 3 would be a 6 on the inside. So this will simplify to 6 square root 6. Our last example of simplifying the square roots before we move on to cube roots is the square root of 288x to the 7th. So when there are variables involved, what I want to do is ignore the variables and just break down my number to start. So 288, that's the same thing as 2 times 144. And 144 I know is a perfect square. That's 12 times 12. I'm going to go ahead and circle the 12s. I will not break down a pair if I already found it. I'm going to circle the big numbers. So I have a pair of 12s with a 2 left over. And then x to the 7th, I need to think about how many x's is that? Well, that's 7 x's. So I'm going to list out 7 x's. There's 6, there's 7. And I'm going to circle my pairs of x's that I have. Oh, I have 3 of them with 1 left over. So everything I circled, the 12, the x, the x, the x, all of that needs to leave the square root, where it will be 12 x to how many x's did we have? 3, so to the 3rd power. Square root, there was a 2 and an x left over. That'll stay on the inside as 2x. So this would be 12x cubed square root 2x. Now we're going to take a look at simplifying cube roots. Cube roots are going to be simplified the exact same way as square roots, except square roots required us to find 2 of the same number. Cube roots are going to require us to find 3 of the same number. So the cube root of 8, I'm going to want to break this down. 8 is 2 times 4. 4 is 2 times 2. So I want 3 of the same number. Right there I have 3 2's with nothing left over. So nothing left over, the circle goes on the outside. Nothing left over means there's no cube root left. This was a perfect cube, and that was 2. Unfortunately, not all numbers are perfect cubes, so we're going to go through simplifying imperfect cubes now. We want to simplify the cube root of 16. So again, there's a little 3 on my radical symbol. That means I need to find 3 of the same number hidden within my bigger number. So 16 would be 2 times 8. 8 would be 2 times 4. 4 would be 2 times 2. I'm going to circle 3 of the same number. I have 3 2's, and I have 1 2 left over. The number I circled goes on the outside, so there's a 2. The number I underlined stays inside. But be careful, this was a cube root. So you need to write that this is a cube root by putting a little 3 on your radical symbol. And then the 2 goes on the inside. So this was 2, cube root of 2 left over as our answer for the cube root of 16. Simplifying a negative cube root of 24. We're going to, again, be looking for 3 of the same number because there's a cube there. And we need to break this down. 24 would be 2 times 12. 12 would be 2 times 6. And 6 would be 2 times 3. So 3 of the same number, right there I have 3 2's. That's going to go on the outside with the negative that's already there. And then the 3 that I did not use will stay on the inside of the cube root. So on the outside I have a negative, and I'm going to take the 2, so that's now negative 2. And since I underlined, I still have a cube root left. This is a cube root of what did I underline? 3. 3 didn't have any buddies, it wasn't allowed to leave. Our next example, we're going to simplify the cube root of 108. So we're going to need to make a factor tree. 108 is 2 and 54. 54 is 2 and 27. 27 is 3 and 9. And 9 is 3 and 3. Let me bring down my other numbers just to make sure I didn't lose anything. Now, since this is a cube root, we're looking for 3 of the same number. I have 3 3's and 2 2's left over. So not enough to make a cube with the 2's. So the 2's need to stay on the inside. The 3 is going to go on the outside. So cube root, I have 2 2's left over on the inside. Remember, whenever there's more than one thing, we want to multiply those together. So this would be 3 cube root, 2 times 2 is 4. And our last example, we're going to simplify the cube root of 16x to the 8th. So again, when there's variables involved, I am going to just simplify the number to start. 16 would break down to 2 times 8. 8 is 2 times 4. 4 is 2 times 2. We bring all the 2's down so they're on the same level. This is a cube root, so I need 3 of the same thing. And then I had 1 2 left over. So 1 2 will leave, 1 2 will stay. And then x to the 8th, I have 8 x's. So I'm going to write out 8 x's. Again, I'm looking for 3 of the same thing. So there's one group. There's 2 groups. And then I've got 2 left over. So on the outside, I get to take the 2 I circled and 2 x's. That would be x squared. On the inside of the cube root, I did some underlining. There's a 2 and 2 x's. That would be x squared. So cube root of 16x to the 8th becomes 2x squared, cube root of 2x squared. This concludes our lesson on being able to simplify square roots and cube roots. If you have any questions, please ask Miss Brooks. Otherwise, we'll catch you next time on your Daily Dose of Math with Miss Brooks.